Here we are with a review of the Sony Xperia T. So this is Sony's latest handset and is going to be known as the Bond phone because it will be in the James Bond film Skyfall. So the Xperia T is one of their high-end handsets that compares to the likes of the HTC One X and the Samsung Galaxy S3. Now in terms of overall specification, it's fairly similar. There are some differences. Let's just give you a little look at the profile of this against the HTC One X as some sort of basis for comparison. They're very similar. The One X has got sort of more curvature to it, as has the Samsung Galaxy S3, where the Xperia T has got this sort of squarer form factor that some people do prefer. I think there's a sort of degree of strength in the square sort of shape. It feels sort of more robust in the hand. It doesn't feel like it's going to slip so easily. Now what the Xperia T does, and you can't really appreciate this from the sort of side profile, is it's got a bit more of the arc design that we've seen on the Sony Xperia Arc devices of past, and it's nice to see that because they did away with that with the Sony Xperia S, and now you have this on the Xperia T, which just makes it a little bit more comfortable in the hand, makes it look a little bit different. So we've got the 4.5-inch display on the front here. On the side of the device we've got the power button, the volume keys and a dedicated camera button. It's nice to see the dedicated camera button. You don't see that on so many devices now. That's a real advantage because what you can do is you can simply press, hold and shoot and you're straight into the camera application, which is nice for fast action photos. I'm not convinced on the actual location of the power and volume keys. Now we're used to seeing the power button up at the top edge of the device here or up here, and the volume keys tend to be on the side here or here. Now I've moved them down. Now that makes sense to a right-handed person. The power button there, I can kind of see that with the bigger screen, but the volume keys, you're just sort of having to manipulate your thumb into positions which aren't so natural. So it's probably going to be one of those things you either love it or you hate it, but personally I'm not convinced on that key location. The edges are fairly smooth. What they've done away with on the Xperia T is the micro USB port and the micro HDMI. Now they've just got one connection, the micro USB connection, which does MHL or HDMI out through this one connection. Now I think that's a bit of a disappointment. Now whilst there's a benefit for Sony, it's one port, it helps keep the costs down and makes it easier to understand for some customers. What Sony had an advantage was in previous times is that you could keep your device powered through the micro USB port but still take video out through the actual HDMI connection. Now you're not able to do that on the Xperia T. What you're actually having to use is this one port for that connection. You could also, or used to be able to do, is connect up USB host facilities to the micro USB connection and then still connect up to an HD display. You could have connected your PlayStation controller whilst having it connected to an HD display. Now that's not to say you can't still connect this to an HD display whilst doing things like USB hosting and connecting your PlayStation controller, but it becomes more difficult and you need to have the hardware available to actually allow you to do it. So I do think that's a little bit of a limiting factor, which is a shame and was one of the things that kept Sony unique, and I feel they've kind of gone down the HTC Samsung route with this. You do have on the side here a little cover that goes over the micro SIM card slot and the micro SD card slot. So you've got 16 gig of internal storage on the Xperia T. Now that's not going to be enough for everybody, so the benefit of the micro SD card is a really nice thing to see, so you can expand that, where you've got some limitations in some of the other devices on the market nowadays. The camera and video capabilities of this device are pretty good. Sony has always been quite good, especially in low light conditions, and we think they've kept this up in the Xperia T so far. We of course have got the Android version 4 operating system on here, and we'll no doubt see an upgrade to Android 4.1 or Jelly Bean. You've got their Timescape interface on here as well, so that's kind of standard and synonymous with Xperia devices. Some of the advantages we've got here is that we can press and hold on the power button for a couple of seconds and we've got the ability to take a screenshot, whereas on a lot of other devices, if we want to take a screenshot, we've got to press and hold the power button and the volume down key. So that's a nice little addition that was missed out on some of the updates to Android 4 on previous Xperia devices. You had to go to that key press. You've got the 3.5mm audio jack for headphones, calls and what have you. It's kind of as standard. The sound quality is pretty good, as is the sound quality when it comes to making a telephone call. Because this is of course Google Android, it syncs up to all your Google accounts. You've got things like Facebook installed on here as standard. What you've also got is Sony's services of Music Unlimited and Video Unlimited. Now these are somewhat underrated, but it's interesting to know that Music Unlimited actually has more tracks than the likes of Spotify, simply because Sony Music signs so many artists. You actually find a lot of the tracks are available through Music Unlimited sooner than the likes of Spotify or similar services. This is PlayStation certified, so you get PlayStation games on here like you did on the Xperia S and the Xperia Play. So you've got access to their store here as well. Sony have sort of a precedent with installing their Liveware Manager, so you've got options on here for controlling certain elements when you connect things up, like a headphone to the headphone socket, what the device does when you do that. You've got NFC, so you can control smart tags on here as well. It's nice to see you get an Office suite installed as standard, and you've got Astro File Manager there as well. So in short, the Xperia T does have some downfalls in terms of its connectivity options, the location of the keys, and for some people the actual overall form factor may not be to your liking. As is to be expected of devices nowadays, there's not an awful lot to really criticise about it. The processor in here is a dual core. That could be a criticism, but because it's a Qualcomm Crate processor, you'll actually find that a lot of the reviews rate this higher than some of the other quad-core processors that are on the market. But overall, a pretty nice device with a nice return of the ARC design. Android version 4, it's solid, good price point, and a generally good performer. But if you are checking this device out, you may want to look at the HTC One X and the Samsung Galaxy S3 to make a more informed decision. So until next time, thanks for watching.